The night in Manila was restless. Dogs barked at shadows. The air smelled of damp earth, and somewhere in the distance, a faint scream had echoed just hours earlier. The city had learned to live with fear, but lately that fear had grown sharper, more personal. Pregnant women whispered to each other in the markets, clutching their bellies as though trying to shield the lives inside from something unseen. Leya had heard the rumors, whispers of a predator that roamed in silence. They called it Tiktik. It fed on the unborn, they said. It slithered across rooftops, scratching at windows, waiting for the chance to sink its teeth into a womb. But Leya didn't believe in such things, at least not at first. She was 8 months pregnant, her belly round and heavy, and her husband was working abroad in Dubai. He promised to come home before the baby arrived, but that was weeks away. Until then, she was alone in the house, or almost alone. Every night, she spoke to her husband through video calls, sharing small details about her day. "Si baby, panayang sipa," she would say with a tired smile. Her husband worried constantly. "Mahal, sigurado ka ba? Hindi ba mas mabuting may kasama ka?" That's when they hired help, a woman named Gemma. She arrived on a gray afternoon, an older woman wrapped in black from head to toe with a small worn-out bag slung over her shoulder. Her eyes were sharp, too sharp, as though they could pierce through skin and bone. When Leya opened the door, a chill crept inside the house with her. "Magandang araw," the woman greeted softly. "Ito po ba ang bahay ni Leo Garcia?" "Opo," Leya replied, trying to smile. "Ako si Leya, asawa niya. Kayo po ba si Ate Gemma?" Gemma only nodded and stepped inside. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. The silence she carried with her was heavy enough. Leya led her to the small spare room. The older woman paused before entering, her eyes lingering on the ceiling. She stood there a moment too long, staring as if something unseen was crawling just above them. Then she gave a faint smile. "Salamat iha, magiging komportable ako rito." That night, Leya struggled to sleep. The sound of footsteps padded across the hallway, too soft to belong to her. At one point, she thought she heard faint whispers through the wall, like someone reciting words in a language she did not understand. By morning, Gemma was already awake, sweeping, cooking, moving silently through the house with uncanny energy. She barely spoke, only smiling at Leya now and then, her gaze dropping again and again to Leya's swollen belly. And though she worked hard, washing clothes, scrubbing floors, preparing meals, there was something wrong. Something about the way she moved, too precise, too tireless. Something about her silence. At times, Leya caught her just standing there, staring, not at the window, not at the walls, but directly at her stomach. And every time their eyes met, Gemma would smile. A smile that never reached her eyes. The days passed quietly, too quietly. Gemma worked like a shadow, swift, precise, silent. The house, once filled with the soft sound of Leya humming while she cooked, now felt suffocated by the older woman's presence. Every morning, breakfast was already laid out neatly on the table, steam rising from freshly cooked rice and fried eggs. Every evening, the floors gleamed as if scrubbed raw. Leya should have been grateful, but instead she felt uneasy. It was the way Gemma moved. She never seemed tired, never rested. Sometimes Leya would wake in the middle of the night, heart pounding from a dream, only to hear faint sounds, the soft swish of a broom or the creak of a cabinet door, long after midnight. And then there were the stairs. Whenever Leya sat in the sala, reading or resting her swollen feet, she would catch Gemma watching her from the kitchen doorway. Her gaze wasn't casual. It was heavy, deliberate, always on her stomach. "Gemma, ayos lang po ba kayo?" Leya asked once, forcing a laugh to hide her discomfort. The older woman only smiled. "Ayos lang ako, hiha. Ang mahalaga ay ayos ka at ang laman ng tiyan mo." The words sank into Leya's mind, cold and wrong. That night, something happened. She was alone in bed, her husband's voice still echoing in her ears from their call earlier. "Mahal, mag-iingat ka. Lagi mong ikandado ang mga pinto." He sounded nervous, more than usual. It was past midnight when she woke to a sound, a faint tapping against the window. Tuck, tuck, tuck. At first, she thought it was just branches brushing the glass, but there were no trees near that side of the house. Her chest tightened. Slowly, she turned her head toward the window. Nothing. But the sound continued, softer this time, closer, almost as if it were coming from inside the room. She held her breath. The baby kicked hard, as though it too sensed something unnatural. Then she heard it, a whisper. Not in her ear, not in her head, but above her. Words she didn't understand, spoken low and guttural, seeping through the ceiling. Her blood turned cold. She clutched her belly and forced herself to sit up, heart hammering against her ribs. The whispers stopped. Only silence remained. Leya's throat went dry. She gathered what courage she could and stepped into the hallway. The house was dark, but from under Gemma's door, a faint glow leaked out, like candlelight. She froze. Shadows moved against the gap beneath the door, slowly, deliberately. And then she heard it again, the same guttural whispering, rising and falling like a chant. Her hand trembled as she reached for the doorknob. Something deep inside screamed at her not to open it. And just as her fingers brushed the cold metal, the chanting stopped. The glow vanished. The silence pressed against her ears until she could hear her own blood rushing. From inside the room came a voice, low, calm, too calm. "Leya, bakit gising ka pa?" Her knees nearly buckled. It was Gemma, awake, waiting. Leya stood frozen in the hallway, her hands still hovering near the doorknob. Gemma's voice had slithered out from the other side, soft, steady, but carrying a weight that made her skin crawl. "Leya, bakit gising ka pa?" For a moment she couldn't answer. Her throat was tight, her pulse pounding in her ears. When she finally forced words out, her voice trembled. Ihe lang po, pasensya na kung nakabala." A pause, too long. Then, calmly, "Matulog ka na, iha, masama sa buntis ang pagpupuyat." The words were kind, but they dripped with something else, something that made her stomach twist. Leya backed away, forcing a nervous smile even though Gemma couldn't see her. She returned to her room and locked the door, heart racing. She tried to convince herself it was nothing, just her imagination, just her nerves. But that night, her dreams were filled with shadows crawling along the ceiling, whispering in voices that weren't human. The next morning, the house looked normal, too normal. Gemma moved about her chores with her usual quiet diligence, but her face was different somehow, drawn, pale, her eyes darker. When Leya sat down to eat breakfast, the smell hit her, strong, metallic. Blood. She froze, her spoon halfway to her mouth. "Gemma, ano po to? Bakit parang may amoy?" The older woman didn't even glance at her. "Isda lang yan. Baka nagdagdagan ng dugo habang nililinis ko." But Leya knew the scent. It wasn't fish. It was richer, heavier. She swallowed hard and pushed the food away.
Gemma's eyes flicked toward her, sharp and quick. "Sayang," she murmured, "ang sarap sana." Leya forced a laugh, pretending it was a joke, but her stomach turned. Later that day, she decided to check Gemma's room while the woman was out buying groceries. Her hands shook as she pushed the creaking door open. At first, it seemed ordinary. A small bed, a wooden cabinet, a suitcase in the corner. But then she smelled it again, that thick, coppery scent of blood. Her eyes darted to the cabinet. Slowly, she pulled it open. Inside were clothes, but not just clothes. Folded neatly among them were scraps of cloth, stained dark brown, stiff with dried blood. Her breath hitched. And there was something else, a small bundle wrapped in red fabric. When she unwrapped it, her blood ran cold. Inside were feathers, blackened bones, and a tiny glass jar filled with thick, dark liquid. The air in the room seemed to close around her. She felt watched, as though unseen eyes had noticed her trespass. She quickly wrapped the bundle back and shut the cabinet. Her hands were trembling so badly she almost dropped the door. Then she heard it, a soft chuckle from behind her. She spun around, her heart in her throat, but the room was empty. Still, the sound lingered, low, rasping, too close to be imagined. That night, the house no longer felt like her home. The walls seemed thinner, the shadows longer, and the air heavier. Leya lay in bed, clutching her belly, trying to steady her breathing. She told herself it was just stress, just her imagination. But deep down, something inside her screamed, "You are not safe." Sometime past midnight, she woke to a sound. Not footsteps, not the wind. A slow, deliberate scratching. Scrook, scrook, scrook. It came from the roof above her. Long nails dragging against the wood, pausing, then scraping again. Her skin prickled. She held her breath, listening. The baby kicked hard, almost painfully. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Scrook, scrook. The scratching moved across the roof, down the wall, closer to her window. Then silence. For a moment she thought it had stopped, but then came the tapping. Tuck, tuck, tuck. Her heart raced. The sound was coming from the glass. Slowly, with every ounce of courage she could muster, she turned her head. Outside the window, half hidden by the curtains, were two glistening eyes, black, unblinking, staring directly at her. She gasped, jerking backward. The curtain swayed, and the eyes were gone. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. The next morning, she confronted Gemma. "Eight, kagabi may narinig ako, parang may umaligid sa bahay." Gemma looked up from washing dishes. Her expression was calm, too calm. "Siguro po sa lang, iha." But her smile was strange, tight, crooked, and for a fleeting moment her tongue slipped out, longer than it should have been, running across her lips as if savoring a taste that wasn't there. Leya's stomach turned. She wanted to run, to lock herself away. But she forced a shaky smile and nodded. "Oo nga siguro." That evening, the police came knocking. "Magandang gabi, Mrs.," one officer said, tipping his cap. "Nag-iikot kami. May bagong kaso na naman kagabi. Buntis ang biktima." Leya felt her knees weaken. "Buntis po?" The officer nodded grimly. "Parang hayop ang umatake. Wala nang laman ang tiyan niya pag nakita. Kaya po, mag-ingat kayo. Laging niyong ikandado ang pinto. Huwag magbubakas sa hindi kakilala." Her throat went dry. She glanced over her shoulder. Gemma was standing by the hallway, half hidden in shadow, listening. The officer followed her gaze, then lowered his voice. At isa pa, misis, minsan hindi hayop ang dapat katakutan, minsan tao mismo. He gave her a serious look before leaving. When the door shut, silence fell again. And in that silence, Leya realized Gemma hadn't moved. She was still standing there, half in the dark, her head tilted at an unnatural angle, eyes glimmering with something unreadable. When their eyes met, Gemma smiled. "Matulog ka na, iha," she whispered. "Huwag kang mag-alala, hindi kita pababayaan." The way she said it, too tender, too final, made Leya's blood run cold. The house was too quiet. Even the crickets outside had gone silent, as if the night itself was holding its breath. Leya sat on the bed, hugging her swollen stomach. She tried to pray, whispering half-formed words, but her voice cracked. She hadn't seen Gemma all evening, and that unsettled her more than anything. Where was she? She tried calling out once. Gemma? Silence. Then a sound. Slurp. Wet. Muffled. Coming from the kitchen. Her chest tightened. She rose slowly, her bare feet brushing against the cold floor. Every step down the dark hallway felt heavier, as if the air thickened around her. The sound grew clearer. Slurp, crunch, slurp. She stopped at the edge of the kitchen door. The lights inside flickered, dim and yellow. And there, at the table, was Gemma. Her back was hunched, her body trembling in strange jerks. Her head bent low over something on the table. At first, Leya thought she was eating dinner leftovers, but then she saw the truth. A dead chicken lay sprawled before her, feathers torn, chest ripped wide open. And Gemma's face, oh God, Gemma's face was buried in it. Her jaw unhinged too wide, teeth sharp, tearing through flesh. Her tongue stretched unnaturally long, lapping at the blood as it pooled. The sight rooted Leya in place, bile rising in her throat. Then, as though sensing her presence, Gemma stopped. Slowly, stiffly, she lifted her head. Blood dripped from her chin, her mouth stretched into a grotesque grin. "Gising ka pa, iha." Leya stumbled back, a scream trapped in her throat. But Gemma moved fast, too fast for someone her age. She rose from the chair, her body twitching and bending in ways that weren't human. Her voice dropped to a guttural rasp. "Ang tagal kong hinintay to." Her eyes darted to Leya's stomach. Hunger burned there, naked and wild. Leya turned and ran. The hallway stretched before her, but Gemma's footsteps echoed close behind, heavy, pounding, faster than they should be. The air filled with the sound of her ragged breathing, wet and animal-like. Leya shoved her bedroom door shut and locked it, pressing her back against it as her body shook. Gemma's claws, not nails anymore, raked against the wood. "Skirk, skirk." "Buksan mo, iha," Gemma hissed, voice slipping between human and beast. "Mas mapapadali kung hindi ka lalaban." The baby kicked wildly, as if sensing the danger clawing at the door. Tears blurred Leya's vision. She pressed her hands against her belly, whispering desperately, "Please, please, protektahan mo kami." The scratching stopped. Silence. Then, from the roof above, came the sickening sound of something crawling, fast, heavy, closing in. The ceiling groaned, dust fell, and then two thin, elongated hands, tipped with talons, pierced through the wood.
Leya screamed. But before the creature could tear its way inside, a loud bang echoed from outside the house. Voices, male, urgent. "May tao bajan!" The police, they had returned. Gemma hissed, a guttural snarl rattling through the house. The claws withdrew, the sound of her crawling vanishing into the night. The roof was silent again. Leya collapsed to the floor, sobbing, clutching her belly. She was alive, for now. But as the officers banged on the door, shouting for her to open up, she realized one terrible truth. Gemma was gone. And somewhere out there, in the dark streets of Manila, the predator was still hunting.